How are you guys? Did you have a great day? We had quite the storm come through with a ton of rain. I mean, an absolute ton of rain. So I started thinking, with all this rain, how green our grass is going to be, and how blue the sky is now, and all the clouds. But that made me start thinking about, hey, Paula! It made me start thinking about, with all this rain, what does that remind you of? It reminds me of Noah's Ark, right? And some of those people had never seen rain before. Do you have friends that have never seen rain? And I had to start thinking, like, I know I told you about the missionary from Egypt who had never seen snow and thought that they were throwing confetti up in the plane, up at the plane. And I have exchange students that maybe are never had seen snow, or maybe their culture is a little different. And I just started thinking about, I couldn't get my mind off the ark, how those people had never seen rain before, and the storm that hey Sherry, and the storm that we had made me really start thinking about how bizarre that must have been for people who had never seen rain before. What if a storm like what we had went through? How scared they must have been, and why didn't they listen? And why weren't they aware? And why weren't they trying to think of ways? All that stuff started rolling in my mind. It borders on, remember we talked about the other night, somebody who has betrayed you. So it makes me think about the trust factor. How come these people didn't trust what Noah was saying? So I wanted to dig into that just a little bit and see if we could find out what this story talks about in relation to the ark and the people who just thought it was a moot issue, that there was no way it was ever going to happen, and put yourself in their shoes. We always lean on the side of Noah and how he followed God and he did what he was supposed to do. But what about the people who didn't listen? What about the people who had the opportunity to make a conscious decision, to choose to do the right thing, to have faith and to trust and believe, but they chose not to? It parallels very closely when you talk about the end times, or when possibly you're to the point that you're getting ready to take your last breath. What choices did you make? Did you choose to trust? Did you choose to make that conscious decision to believe in Jesus Christ dying on the cross and rising again and becoming your Lord and Savior? Or were you like the people that didn't believe it was going to rain? So let's dig into this and find out. This comes from Genesis chapters 6 through 9. That's 3 chapters. Actually, if you read the full chapter 9, it will be 4, because you have to count chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9. So there's really 4 chapters. Even though it's 6 plus 3 is 9, you have to include the beginning chapter and the ending chapter. So there's 4 chapters of reading, and that's a lot of reading, but if we keep the commitment that we are going to make of reading our Bible at least 5 minutes a night, or a day, or whenever. Oh, Ethan! You just made my whole day. You made my heart happy. What a good kid. Now, Paula, did you give him $20 to say that, or is he being for real? He just got back from vacation on looks like the lake you guys went to. That sounds like a lot of fun. So thank you for that. What a nice, kind comment. Thank you so much. So let's look at Genesis chapter 6 through chapters 9. And the title of this is A New Beginning. And I want to let you think about one thing. We have made all kinds of crazy choices in our life, correct? And sometimes kiddos, I know, none of us are perfect, right? So our moms or our dads or our grandmas, grandpas, Grammy, Grampy, whatever you call them, aunt, uncle, they asked you to do something and you chose not to do it. You just blatantly said, I am not going to do that, they're crazy. Or you might have said, well, my mom's never going to find out. She'll never know. I want you to think about, hey Tanya, I want you to think about that new beginning. It's not just a new beginning, like every single day we wake up is a new day, right? So what happened yesterday is gone. We can't change it. So we have to choose our words wisely. Don't say something that might hurt someone's feelings intentionally, because we can't take it back. Another thing we have to think about is that choice or that decision we made, it's over, it's gone, it's done, but we have the repercussions or we have the ramifications of the choice that we made. what I want to share with you is every time that you repent, and repent doesn't just mean, hey, I'm sorry, God, didn't mean to do that. Okay, let me do it again. It means you literally turn away from what you were doing. That is a new beginning. And sometimes God will go to extremes to get your attention. There's so many stories out there of way God's gotten people's attention, or he's granted them the opportunity to be above and beyond spectacular in something. Everything is strategically planned. Just remember that. So a new beginning. This is Noah's Ark, Genesis 6 through 9. And it says, time passed, and many people filled the earth. Everyone everywhere had forgotten about God and were only doing bad things all the time. And my sister writes she writes some blogs. She's actually a really great editor, so I like for her to look at my stuff when I'm getting ready to submit it. And she will talk about how she thought she was just such a good person. And she'll even say, I thought I was a good person. And when I do this, that's like air quotes. That means she thought she was good, but really, internally, she wasn't good. She was running from God. She knew she was running from God, but she had no desire to turn around because she was like, hey, you know what, I'm too far gone. That's not true. That is not true. So she's getting ready to submit an article and see if it can be submitted and published. So I'm hoping it does. Anyway, she was like, you know, my spiritual life was a mess. Her life in general wasn't a mess. She's a fabulous person, but she talks about how she felt like her spiritual life was a mess, and how she had done and things. She thought she was a good mom, and a good worker, and a good sister, which she's an excellent sister. So the thing that she ties it into is God had different plans for her, but she was running from God. She didn't realize that he wanted her to go to China or to the Middle East or to Africa or wherever she was going to start working in the missions field. So he actually grabbed her attention, and she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So she has MS. And when you think about how debilitating that disease is, every disease is debilitating. Every disease is a bad disease, but I'm really partial to, let's find a cure for that, right? But what she talks about in her story is God says, hold on, I'm not punishing you. I'm just leading you in a different direction. And I love it that she says that. So let's see how God is leading Noah in a different direction. And not that he's running from God, but how his plans maybe weren't God's plans. So let's see what happens. So God's heart was filled with pain because everybody had forgotten about God, and they were only doing bad things all the time. When he saw what had happened to the world he loved, everywhere was disease and death and destruction. All the thing God hates the most. Now, Noah was God's friend, which was odd in those days because nobody else was. Noah listened to God. He talked to God, and he just loved being with God, like you do with your best friend. And I like to think, how cool would it be? I don't know if I would even want to be standing beside God, because I would be like, oh my gosh, I hope my house is clean enough. I hope my hair. But really, he loves us just the way we are, right? So he's like, God's my best friend. How cool is that, right? So Noah, God said, things have gone wrong. People have filled my world with hate instead of love. They're destroying themselves and each other. And my world is being destroyed. I must stop them. First, we'll build an ark. Okay, do you know how to build an ark? I don't. I have a hard time hanging a picture. When I try to hammer in a nail, it usually goes like crooked. So could you imagine if God would say, Jill, I want you to build an ark? I would be like, what? I don't know if I can do that or not. But God asked Noah to build an ark. Noah didn't know how to build an ark, but luckily God knew how, and he was going to show him. Now look, here's a picture of what a blueprint might have looked like. And that's Noah looking at it going, oh boy, I got my work cut out for me, don't I? So a storm is coming, God told Noah, but I will rescue you, I promise. I'll send the animals to you, ones that creep and crawl and slither and slime and gallop and hop and bound and climb. And don't forget to pack everyone's food. And I want to stop there to remind you that we always hear the songs about the animals coming on the ark 2 by 2, 2 of each kind. Well, that's true, but there's more to that. Because in addition to the 2 of each kind of the animals, they had to have food. So actually there were more than 2 of some of these animals, because what are they going to eat? And I know we've talked about this in the past, but again, I want to gear this story tonight toward the people who did not believe in rain. So let's keep going. The storm was going to wash away all the hate and sadness and everything that had gone wrong and make the world clean again. God had thought up a way to keep Noah safe, but Noah would have to trust God and do exactly what God told him. So Noah built an ark, and an ark is short for like a really large boat, right? Noah's neighbors came out to watch. And this is where it gets sad. And point and laugh and make fun of him because they didn't believe Noah about the boat or the storm or needing to be rescued. And Noah must have looked rather silly. His boat was in the desert. And the desert was nowhere near the sea. And there wasn't even a cloud in the sky. Why would anyone need an umbrella, let alone a boat? So let's stop right there just for a second. This is a picture of what it looks like. There's Noah building this boat, and here's the people looking at him and kind of pointing and laughing. Yeah, I know, Ethan, it's so sad. So let's stop and think about this. If your friends came to you and said, hey, look, and where I live, we live near the river, but not really that close. It's a good little bit from the river. But if somebody would come to me and say, we're going to have a hurricane, I have to honestly think I would be like, no. No, we're not. That's crazy talk. We don't live on the ocean. Oh yeah, we're going to have a hurricane, and it's going to go all the way from the river clear to 25 miles past. Everything is going to be flattened and demolished. I can assure you, I would think they had been drinking some crazy syrup. I would be like, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. I would probably pray about it, but I don't know if I would believe them. I mean, to tell me that, hey, we're going to have a hurricane. So what if somebody said, guess what? We're going to have a sand blizzard. Now, what a sand blizzard would look like, I just made this up, this term. I'm not sure if it's like sandstorm is what it's really called. We're going to call it a sand blizzard. So it's going to mean that sand is going to come all over your community, and there'll be so much sand, like in the desert, they get those. There'll be so much sand that you're going to have to like get it out underneath the hood of your car. What would you think? That's probably what you'd be thinking, right? So these people, you have to put yourself in their shoes. They're thinking, this guy is crazier than a loon. There is no way. I've never even heard of what a raindrop would look like, let alone bring a flood, that you have to build this huge, ginormous boat, which the description is in the Bible. It tells you how big it actually was. Look it up in Genesis, and it will tell you the specifics, the measurements of what he had to build. So you're going to tell me it's going to rain relentlessly, and you're building this big, huge boat? That would be like somebody saying, I'm going to like nail down my tent for this big sandstorm. And you're thinking, are you kidding me? This big sandstorm is coming? I live where the grass is green and we have plenty of rain. There's no way we're going to have a sandstorm or a sand blizzard. So that's how those people felt. Sometimes we judge. Why didn't those people, hey Wayne, why didn't those people just listen to Noah? Put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes it's hard to believe something. So that is where it's very important to fact check. And what I mean by that is to validate the facts, but most importantly, we have to pray and continue to pray and pray a little more. Because if we're going to be hearing something that is the most unusual experience that we're supposed to be having, and it's going to have a blizzard in July or a sandstorm and we don't even have any sand, or a hurricane on the river, that's a little far-fetched, isn't it? But what if that was God's plan and he sent a messenger? How do we know it's true? And we have to be careful of people who tell us false stories, but we also have to understand that these people, when we're talking about this story in Genesis, they had never seen rain. And I always wanted to give them a little credit for being skeptical, but at the end of the day, they should have followed God. That is fact. Especially if you've got Noah walking with God and being friends with God, those people should know that he knows what he's talking about, but they didn't give him any credit. They discredited him. Noah didn't mind so much what other people thought. Do you worry what people think about you? Let me tell you something. Your only approval factor needs to come from God. That's it. God is the one who gives you approval. So Noah didn't mind what other people thought. All he minded is what God thought. So he just did what God told him to do. When the ark was ready, God said, all aboard! And Noah's family and all the animals climbed inside. Who shut the door? Do you know? I'm going to show you a picture. Look how happy Noah looks. God shut the door. Then what do you think happened? Oh yeah, here it comes. It started raining and raining for minutes that joined up into hours, that joined up into days, that joined up into weeks and weeks. And the rain joined up into puddles, that joined up into rivers, that joined up into lakes, that joined up into a flood that covered the whole world. Now, how much rain is that? That's a lot of rain. I mean, we get a big rainstorm and we got water in the streets, and that's just for maybe an hour or so, if that. We're talking the whole world. That's a lot of rain. Their boat had once seemed so big, suddenly it seems so small. But in the middle of the huge storm and the crashing waves and all the thunder and lightning, through it all, God was with them. And God kept them safe for 40 long days and 40 long nights. Finally, the rain stopped. The sun came out and Noah threw open all the windows. Hooray! Everyone shouted. Noah sent his dove out to explore, and it wasn't long before she brought him back a fresh olive leaf. Everyone knew exactly what that meant. She had found a tree and land. The water was going down. And here's a picture. So the big boat, let's look back at this picture. Do you remember when they're building this great big boat? This is what it looks like, right? Look how big it looks. Now, look at it in the water. Look how tiny it looks. Whew, that big boat got real small real fast. At last, the boat landed quite suddenly on top of a great mountain. As soon as it was safe, God said, "Out you come." And so they did. Everyone skipping and dancing onto dry land. The first thing Noah did was to thank God for rescuing them, just as he had promised. And the first thing God did was make another promise. I will never destroy the world again with water. And like a warrior who puts away his bow and arrow at the end of a great battle, God said, "See, I have hung up my bow in the clouds." Do you remember what that was? What the promise was in the clouds that God made the promise with? I'll let you type it in there. And I'm not maybe seeing all the comments, but if you go ahead and type it, I can see it when I post the video. And there, in the clouds, just where the storm meets the sun, was a beautiful bow of light. It was a bow that was made of light in color. It was called a rainbow. It was a new beginning in God's world. It wasn't long before everything went wrong again, but God wasn't surprised. He knew this would happen. That's why, before the beginning of time, he had another plan, a better plan. A plan not to destroy the world, but to rescue it. A plan to one day send his own son. That's right, I bet Ethan said that. One day to send his own son, the rescuer. God's strong anger against hate and sadness and death would come down once more, but not on his people or his world. No, God's war bow was not pointing down at his people. It was pointing up into the heart of heaven. So let's recap here just for a second. We heard, that's right, Sherry, rainbow. Yay, good job, guys. So let's recap just for a second and think about how we started out. We started out talking about the people who didn't believe Noah. And we always kind of say, why wouldn't they just believe? So then we kind of looked at if somebody would knock on your door and say, a sandstorm's coming, a blizzard's coming. I just got out of the pool. What are you talking about, a blizzard's coming? Would we believe him? Because it seems so far-fetched. Imagine if you had never ever seen it before. And then you're saying, what, really? Yes, that's how those people were in shock at what was even being said. But I have to think, and I really kind of wonder this, and I'd like to know your thoughts on it. I kind of wonder if there was maybe somebody in the crowd who really did want to believe, but was scared to believe. Or maybe they were curious to find out more information, but they were afraid to ask. Or maybe they were thinking, I'm not exactly sure where I fall into this plan, so I'm just not going to show any interest. What I want to share with you is so many people today compare that same thought process to salvation. I'm not sure I want to believe. I don't know if I want to believe. I have questions. I'm not sure who to ask or if I can ask or how do I ask. So be willing and be ready to share what's in the Bible, to share how God has worked miracles in your life and how God has loved you unconditionally, absolutely unconditionally. But we don't have forever to make up our minds. One day, we'll be at the very last breath that we take. Are you ready for eternity? Where are you going to spend eternity? It's a really deep question, and I want you to think really long and hard about it, because not too far off, at some point, somebody's going to ask you a question, and you'll have to make a decision. What are you going to say? Are you going to follow God, or are you going to follow the world? And it's hard. It's hard. So start praying now, especially you kiddos, that God will help lead you and guide you and keep you from harm and prepare you for those difficult conversations. Thank you guys for sharing just a little bit of your evening with me tonight. I appreciate it so much. On the comments, that yay, good for you guys. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. You can put your comments in the comment section below. Share this video on your page with your friends. If you have any questions, or if you're concerned about what salvation means or how you're going to spend eternity, let us know. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you understand God's Word. That's what it's all about. The Bold Movement sponsors this nightly reading. It is The Bold Movement, the THE, Bold, BOLD, Movement, MOVEMENT.com. They have a website, they have an app, and they have some really cool podcasts. Don't forget to check them out. And she's also selling masks that say, spread the gospel, not germs. So, thank you so much for everything you do. Be kind. Ethan's got me. Be kind, be generous, be faithful, be committed, be obedient, be loving. Don't forget what joy stands for. Jesus, others, yourself, in that order. But be bold. Yes, be bold about sharing God's Word to others. And don't be afraid to make a stand for the one and only person that I know who's ever died for me, just so I can have eternity. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow night at 7:30. Bye, guys.